Spotlight. Let's see. Um, did I nail it? Is it three or am I missing
That
one?
You got it.
Boom. Uh, this machine is yours. Do with it as you will.
Yay. Awesome, everyone. This is kind of funny because Chris and Ethan also lead the Nashville Balanced Breakfast with myself. And we normally meet Fridays at 9 a.m. Central. So I feel like it's supposed to be Friday at 9 a.m., but it's
yeah,
Saturday at
really.
7 p.m. And now I'm all thrown off with my times. So without further ado, I wanted to kind of introduce ourselves and panelists a little bit. I know a couple other people have jumped into the Zoom, so if we didn't get full introductions, we'll just kind of give a little quick round of introductions right now. I'll introduce their panel topic and we'll just kind of jump in from there. So Chris, do you maybe want to go first and just kind of give a quick little 5 seconds of kind of who you are and what you do?
Sure. Chris Silverio, producer, musician, record label owner. I live in Nashville, and I am from Philadelphia. And I've been here for 6 years, and uh, I found Balanced Breakfast through actually Falana Goodrich.
Love it. All right, Ethan, same spiel to you.
All right. Ethan X. Howard. I'm a record producer and audio engineer, just kind of general studio rat. Yeah.
Love it. How'd you hear about Balanced Breakfast?
I think also linked up with Falana Goodrich and ended up. I was actually been a part of the Balanced Breakfast Nashville since the very first meeting.
Yes, and that's where you and I met. We figured that out the other day. Yeah, so I'm Chelsea Cressman. I'm also here in Nashville. I am the director of 0 to 60 at AGD Entertainment, where we do day-to-day management and artist development. We work with artists from all over the place. As Annie Bacon said, we worked together before, so it's been really great that we've continued to kind of work on that developing level, even with all the craziness of this past year. And yeah, I've been in Nashville for 7 years, been doing Balanced Breakfast for about the almost 6 years that we've been doing it in Nashville. And yeah, got connected to Balanced Breakfast actually via my intern at the time at a totally different management company, just stumbled on it on Facebook and the rest is history. So thanks for doing what you do, Stefan. All right, so for today's topic, we wanted to just dive in on just kind of the foundations and basics of what are NFTs. I mean, it is just a hot topic going around everything right now, not just with music, but just in all sorts of digital creative spaces. So this topic has not only come up in our Balanced Breakfast chapter in Nashville for, I swear it's been the past like 4 to 6 weeks. Ethan, Chris, and myself always come up with some sort of new topic. And by
You
default,
can't
we
you can't
always
get
end up
away
on,
from them.
we always end up on NFTs. But I think what's really important is, you know, being able to recognize kind of where those trends are and just really jumping on those and taking the time to dive in and talk about as much as we needed. So, I mean, obviously anywhere from our Balanced Breakfast groups, but then also, I don't know if you guys saw, and I'll put it in the chat here in a minute, but SNL even did a skit on NFTs a couple weekends ago. So, you know, it's a hot topic everywhere. We wanted to kind of take some time to deep dive on it and just kind of where that may be changing things in the creative space and with music. So kind of where we want to kick it off is Ethan's going to kind of give us like a basic definition and breakdown of what is an NFT, kind of including a little bit of how the whole blockchain works. So Ethan, in kind of like your simplest form, what is it and how does it work?
Yeah. So, and don't worry, I'm not like a crypto expert, so I'm not gonna get into the weeds of all the different token types and all that. Yeah. So an NFT is a non-fungible token. It's kind of like a digital representation of a digital good. Effectively, it's like a packaging format to create value around digital goods. So when you mint an NFT, which that's what the process of creating an NFT is called, minting, you're basically just creating an ownership record that's stored on a public ledger, the public blockchain. Right now, most of them are using the Ethereum blockchain, but there's a lot of other ones popping up. Cardano is making a big push, near a couple others. And basically, a good way to think of it is it's kind of like both ownership and provenance for digital goods. So a big distinction here is like with iTunes, when you bought an MP3 off of iTunes, you didn't actually own that audio file. You were just purchasing a license to access that file. So it came up, there was a big high profile story where I think some actor was trying to put together his will and wanted to pass down he had spent like $10,000 in the iTunes store and wanted to pass that down to his children. And come to find out you can't, because once you can't transfer ownership of those digital files because there is no ownership, it's just a license. But with an NFT, you can actually resell, and there's a secondary market for those tokens, for those digital goods. And it doesn't have to necessarily be digital goods. It can be attached to physical goods as well, experiences, like the Kings of Leon thing. This print up here, I actually purchased off of Foundation, an artist that I've gotten to know, Signe Pierce. It was one of those where you buy the NFT, redeem it, and get the physical print. So it's pretty much whatever you can come up with, you can put into an NFT.
I like it. The sky is the limit, right?
Mhm.
as long as you created it. So that's awesome. So that's kind of setting the stage a little bit for kind of what is it. So now I'm going to toss it over to you, Chris, and kind of maybe give us an example of kind of how to walk us through the flow of an NFT. And some of you guys might have seen like the easiest way that I was able to kind of understand how these flowed were through like baseball trading cards. And there's a couple other examples with kind of more like fine art type things. So Chris, if you want to maybe break this down for us with an example, that'd be great.
Great. Somebody explain it to me. No. Well, with art, there is usually and if you start with art first, you have that unique painting. And the thing about NFTs is that they are supposed to be a unique assignment, a unique number, unique digital mark that will usually go with something else. So pieces of things and original creations like a cartoon of, Peter from Family Guy dunking over Shaquille O'Neal is, can be that little video segment is an NFT. Family Guy isn't, and Shaq isn't, but when you combine them in an artistic way, you can create that into an NFT. What came up was, well, what about songs? Nobody has figured out how do you an NFT a song, because you want everyone to hear that song. You want everyone to have access to that song, but you can't create that song. So one of the, I guess, which I had just saw, one of the kind of more creative ways of dealing with a song, not a snippet of a song. You can actually NFT a snippet of a song, and somebody can own that. But when you think about a song in its whole self, it's kind of hard to NFT that song. So somebody decided to offer NFTs and then put up a website that allowed you to remix his song. And I think there was a limited 25 remixes or something like that. So he sold NFTs that you would then get with the song but then you could actually allow you to remix that song, and then you would have that remix of that song, and that's the only remix of that song. So that seems like a pretty creative way to get around the entire song issue, as opposed to just taking a snippet of a song. And that usually got attached to some kind of visual or physical medium anyway. So pieces of a song with a dance or
Chris, for just clarification, when you're referring to the whole song, are you referring to the rights side of the song as well, or just the actual, like the full audio file?
Well, that's another, Ethan, that's a good one, because that's another rabbit hole that you now have to go down. So now there's NFT licenses that you have to deal with, and now lawyers, they've all been scrambling to actually understand how to write an NFT license. So what do you actually own when you have an NFT and part or this part of the song? You don't get to go now put that on Spotify and make money off of that. So there are, there's limitations.
Well,
Right.
and I was going to just jump in. Annie put a couple questions in the chat and just, kind of whoever buys the NFT, like, are they the only ones that can hear it forever? Like, do you guys as artists, are you giving up your rights to put songs out with broad distribution if there's an NFT in it? And that kind of came up when Ethan and Chris and myself were kind of preparing for this panel of how is this going to affect music as far as record deals and Spotify distribution, and kind of what is going to happen with kind of the consumerism of music at this point. So Ethan or Chris, do either one of you kind of want to dive into some of the little things that we were talking about with as far as like,
Yeah.
distribution and on digital side of things?
Yeah, I can definitely kick in on some of this. So this is something I've mentioned a few times just in our private discussions. I think, and I've been guilty of this myself, I think there's a lot of overthinking going on with NFTs because it is this new thing and everybody's like, oh my God, what is this? Like, it's totally new, but it's really not that new. It's just a new sales mechanism that actually makes sense for digital goods. So like with Annie's question about limiting who can hear it and whatnot, so it's really no different than any other digital audio platform where, anybody can copy, replicate the digital file. But what this is just a mechanism of ownership. And when it's like, what do you buy if you're selling the song as an NFT? The assumption would just be, it would just be like, standard copyright law, which this is another thing. Everybody's kind of like getting so hyped on NFTs that there's a lot of like forgetting that copyright law exists and IP law exists. So when you're like, if you're selling a song as an NFT, from a copyright and IP law standpoint, it's purchasing a copy. The same way that when you buy a CD, you're purchasing that copy. It's just a digital file instead of the digital file encoded and stamped on a disc of plastic.
Same wavelengths there. Annie just asked that same question and you gave the example. So that was perfect.
Yeah,
exactly.
Exactly.
It is more like, you buy the CD, you can resell that CD, but like that's your copy of it. And kind of one of the things I wanted to dive into from there, I mean, we had talked about some of our discussions where, okay, so NFTs are a thing now in music. Does this only apply to extremely famous people with very large fan bases, like how Kings of Leon just did kind of an NFT auction for one of their album releases? I'll drop that link in the chat as well. Or is this something that smaller independent artists can kind of get a hold with as well? So Chris, you want to maybe give some feedback on that? Yeah.
I think that an NFT will probably, at least the way it looks like to me, that it will turn into another tool that an artist gets to use. Just like every other tool that is out there that an artist gets to use, but we don't always get to use every single tool because we're not on a level where we need that tool. So if you can devote time to, you have the following and you can support an NFT. And yes, your NFT does not have to sell for $64 million.
It'd be nice. It'd be very nice.
It'd be nice. Yeah.
You
It'd
can't
be
all be people.
Yeah, you can't all. Yeah, that's why NFTs are there, man. You can't all be people. So, but will they work? I would look at them as like any other tool that you're going to use. Merch, it can get, the thing about it is that it can get tied to stuff like merch. It can get tied to a singular item. So I know they're so hyped right now, and basically with anything, whether it be technology, whether it be new marketing methods, it's usually the big guys. Once the big guys use it and figure out and everyone else sees that it works, you kind of scale it down to what works on your level. You only need one super fan to actually validate creating an NFT, which will cost, I don't know, probably some minted is somewhere between $200 and $250.
Although
One of the
that
examples
is
that
going to be
I
rapidly changing too. Sorry, the gas
Right.
prices.
Yes.
That's one of the big variables, and kind of sorry to hop in there, Chelsea.
all good.
That's one of the big things. I think I've been watching the NFT space for several years, the crypto music space, and it really strikes me as, that, there's been all this buzz around these huge big ticket auctions, which naturally, Kings of Leon, like, what do you mean somebody bought a golden ticket for what, $150,000? Like, it's a pretty staggering number. But with the underlying intention and looking at this whole landscape of artists that have been releasing NFT music for several years now, which there is a small group of artists that have been in this for a while. And it's just anytime that we have a big format change in 2000, 2001, when we went from CDs, cassettes to MP3s, and Napster came along. Napster was never supposed to be the upsetting, decimating music industry thing that it turned into. And then when Spotify came along and we shifted to streaming, this is just that next logical progression that fixes a lot of the issues that we've had over the last 20 years, which is one of the reasons I'm so excited about it.
I love it.
Right.
And that was
Now-
one of the things that we had talked about, which was, is this going to be a fad or is this going to stick around? And I think for the three of us, and we'll open this up for discussion kind of, in towards the end, but the three of us have kind of come to the conclusion that we think this is going to be the next thing that sticks around. We think that some of these high ticket auction items, like what Kings of Leon is doing, is probably not going to be the thing that sustains every artist. And that might not be the thing that lasts, of the way of doing NFTs like that. But being able to have a very specific one of one type of way of putting ownership on music, I think this is just going to be that new way of doing that. I mean, some of our examples too, where remember when, even iPhones first came out and it was like, whoa, someone has a brand new iPhone. It was so fancy. And now it's like, I can't function without my iPhone. So I think there's also a lot of it is, technology just has a way of coming out a lot faster than we can really kind of catch up to it. And by the time we catch up to it, it just kind of becomes second nature. So for the three of us, we had kind of concluded that we think this is going to be something that sticks around for a while. And like exactly what Ethan was saying, it's a new way for us to be able to track and follow and, be able to put some stamps on our art in a really good way.
Was this after was this after our hour and a half discussion, or trying to find a definition for what is a fad?
Yes, that's where we came up with that.
And that's already happening with the big auctions. I saw an article coming from the financial press world today talking about how all the prices of NFTs are already deflating. Is the bubble bursting? And it's like, no, well, yes and no. Yes, in that there definitely was that big speculative bubble the last month or so. But NFTs are here to stay. Like, they're going to permeate anything that's digital that we touch and interact with from a business setting or commerce setting. This time, a year from now, 2 years from now, 10 years from now, everything's going to be NFTs. Or
it'll probably be in like, oh, you're mastering. Yes, NFT is now going to be another line item on anything you master.
Well, so with that, it's going to be more like the NFT and the smart contract will end up getting implemented as your business agreement. Instead of an invoice, there's a token that is sent over, and there's the transaction for that token. And I think that's where where I said earlier that there's a lot of overthinking. It's because you can overthink it, because it's whatever you want to write into the contract. There's different. I said earlier I wasn't going to get into the different tokens. I'm not going to actually get into them, but you should know that there are different protocols and tokens, that they're all represented by, different numbers and usually an acronym. Like the ERC is the most common, which is all on the Ethereum blockchain. But that's where I think that this is, if we're in music professionally and really trying to go for it, I've always thought it doesn't make sense to omit yourself from marketplaces, and this is going to be the big marketplace. And if you're not in that marketplace, you're going to have a hard time doing business. So I definitely recommend OpenSea created a document called the NFT Bible, which I'll drop the link in the chat there. It's a great primer. There's a little bit of like technical stuff, but it's written in a way that you can get up to speed pretty quick. And so I definitely recommend checking that out.
And from the artist development side of things, kind of going back to, is this for artists that are already really established like Kings of Leon? I mean, think about some of the ways that any of you guys are just developing artists in general, like coming up with exclusive content for like a VIP mailing list or just like an exclusive merch item. It can be very cool ways of being able to connect with your fan base and being able to offer kind of like limited edition type of things in just a new and unique and digital way. So if that's something that, any artist on the development level is like trying to just explore for the first time, it's like, hey, check this out with your super fans. Try to find some sort of VIP piece of content or exclusive thing that maybe your super fans would like, just as if you were going to run like a limited edition vinyl pressing or a limited run of a, one of a kind t-shirt design that's only going to be available during a pre-order. It's a similar mindset to that. And it's like Ethan was saying, it's another avenue to kind of market to your fans and get some information out to your fans. So, another thing, and this is kind of, a little inside joke for the Nashville Balanced Breakfast, is for a long, long time, we called Spotify the S word. And it was a forbidden topic because every time it got brought up, you'd have industry and artists totally divided on either side. And the reason I say that is
that was usually me bringing it up.
For the longest time, I mean, Spotify is one of those places too, where like, yes, do artists deserve to get paid more? Yeah, I agree on that. Like, it's not a lot of money that comes from Spotify, but if you're not on Spotify, it's such a huge promotional and discoverability platform that I think kind of going into NFTs with that mindset is like, are you going to make millions of dollars off of it tomorrow? Probably not. Is it a cool new piece of talking point that you can throw into your marketing as an artist? Yeah. So that's kind of, at least from like an artist development side of things, where I can see that coming more into play. And instead of thinking, oh, well, I'm not Kings of Leon, I can't auction something off for $500,000, so maybe I shouldn't pay attention to this.
But again, not every NFT has to be an auction. And I think that's one of the things where people are getting so focused on that. That's only doing the one of ones. That's just one way to do an NFT. There's also what's called open editions, which I think right now mostly mint in batches of up to 10,000. And again, going back to the CD analogy, it's identical to that. You do a pressing, nobody makes unlimited CDs when they do the pressing. If you're an up and coming group, you do maybe 100, 500 CDs. And then if you run out, you go print more. And so it's kind of the same thing with NFTs. You can keep doing the open editions, and it's just like selling CDs. You can sell, you can go platinum and sell 1 million units of the NFT. Well, it'll be interesting to see how Nielsen and Billboard and everybody in the RIA, how they take this into account for like record certification and things like that. Which that'll be interesting. Just now was the first time I'd even thought about that aspect of all of this.
And just by that, that's what will happen, is that will then actually kind of make the market find its spot, find out kind of what these things are worth, what that is worth. It's and there are actually in the industry or in the arena, there are companies that are dedicated just creating NFTs for photographers and just for visual artists or just for this mixed medium. So it will get segmented kind of fairly quickly. And as the big NFTs, yeah, sure, everyone's going to want to buy that, that Rolex that whatever had. But, NFT is just good. It's whatever you think it's worth or whatever your fans are willing to pay for it. That's what it's going to be worth to start with.
Yeah, and I saw your comment in the chat there, Jeff. I think that you make a really good point that it's having artists become a part of the NFT community and not just expecting to just jump in and make a bunch of money. So I agree with, it's coming up with creative ways. And we even talked about this kind of in the three of us discussing. It's like there's always going to be new technologies and new digital ways for artists to gain fans. There's always new social media I mean, look at TikTok in this past year. There's always going to be a new space for artists to be able to kind of plug into creatively. And for me, it's a matter of, A, are you looking for a new space? Are you looking for a new digital avenue in order to kind of get your materials out to fans? If so, NFTs are another one of those options to dive into. But if NFTs are just totally overwhelming and not a space that you want to be in, it's like, okay, don't force yourself to go into it right now if that's not the best place. It's the same thing I tell a lot of my artists too, where, it's like, okay, there's certain things like, you should really be on Facebook and Instagram because those are the two platforms or on social media that people are just finding information. It's kind of become like your website at a certain point, Facebook and Instagram. But with TikTok, it's like, yeah, if you want to dive into a new platform, be creative and go and do that. Great. But if that's not up for you, then don't stress yourself out and don't take away from your creative headspace in order to try to spread yourself too thin and to know all these new things that are coming on. So that was one of the biggest takeaways that we had talked about too, is like, does everybody need to be jumping in on this right now? And it's like, no. But if you're looking for this avenue and you're looking for something creative, it's very much worth paying attention to because it might really become a very, more mainstream and widely used way of kind of distributing music and just being able to kind of be in that space. So that was at least, again, I'm coming more from like that artist development, like, you're kind of hitting the ground running on that sense. And it's like, this is really overwhelming. What do I do? But yeah, I think, you kind of hit it on the head there, Jeff, where it's like, just coming in and looking at it as another tool that you guys can have in your digital and creative tool belt as artists.
Yeah, and I'd like to kind of bounce off that too. It's kind of funny. It's like every time there's this big new technology, the thing that works is always going back to the same old from back in the day. It's record stores. It's no different from record store culture. We're just doing it online. And a big part of that too is knowing where those communities are. So like Clubhouse and Twitter right now are probably the two biggest places for the NFT community. You go on any of those places at any hour of the day and pull up NFT, and there's tons of people talking about it, sharing their stuff. And I agree, like with what Jeff said, it's like going into a Reddit forum, or I always think of Instagram because I used to end up getting some of these on my posts back when I used to use hashtags a lot. The people like, yay, like check out my new song or something, and it's just like nothing but selling. And I kind of like, not to be a Gary V blowhard, but it's that jab, 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 right hook. You don't want to be, you don't want to be coming out with the right hook every single time. You got to give people value before you try to extract value out of them.
Well, I am at all for getting control, ownership back into the hands of the artist, of whoever created it. And maybe, hopefully, NFTs maybe morph into something or a way that artists actually now then get to own something. And you can work into the contract that every time that NFT is sold, I get 10%, 5%, whatever the artist gets that. So every time that thing is sold, you're now still creating a revenue stream, but it's based off of your actual art. So I don't know, again, Ethan, everyone talks about this until we've probably talked ourselves all the way through to the end of not even wanting them.
Until we invent the next thing. But
right.
I think that's going to be a really a really big thing, because right now it's being treated as this separate thing from anything we've ever known. But again, like if I were in your shoes as a record label owner and president, I would be saying, okay, no, so this is just another digital medium that falls under the digital release clauses in the existing contract. but obviously, like, it's a totally new thing, so there's going to be some renegotiation, and I think we're still a ways out from whatever that being settling in, because record labels are always going to be record labels.
Yeah, don't I know it?
So, but I think it's just a matter of, all the lawyers figuring it out and everybody kind of agreeing. And I think we're going to see a lot of different things and different experiments of what works, what doesn't work. And there have already been some examples like the, oh, why am I blanking on? I'm looking at their name, Kings of Leon. Name was right in front of me and I was blanking on it. The Kings of Leon release that they did through Yellowheart, which is an interesting company to keep an eye on. Yellowheart. It is basically an NFT company that is being backed, owned. I'm not entirely sure what the situation is, but there's a pretty heavy involvement from the guys from the Chainsmokers. And then Blau has been doing a whole lot. And there's a great, do we have that link handy? Blau wrote a great article called Building the Investable Layer of Music, where
I'll
he
toss that in the
basically,
chat.
yeah, where he basically goes through and says, hey, here's how to think of this from a monetization standpoint, structure and all of that, and then how to actually implement that. And it's a really great read. Highly recommend. It's a great way to, it gives you a great foundation, mental foundation to approach, okay, so how the hell do I tackle this NFT thing? That would be a good starting point, that article.
So one of the kind of, questions that the three of us had brought up was, would we advise this to our artists and or ourselves? I know Ethan, you're an artist as well. So it's funny because when we first were talking about NFTs and using a lot of examples like the Kings of Leon auction that keeps coming up, but then also, there was some ridiculous NBA basketball clip that sold for like millions of dollars. And in my mind, I'm like, A, who has this kind of money lying around? And B, who buys this stuff and who pays for this stuff?
But
And it's not
who pays
me.
millions of dollars for a 1950s Mickey Mantle rookie card? It's the same
Exactly.
thing. And,
So
and
we
that's
were-
what Top Shot is. It's just taking that trading card, because, a little, 2x4 piece of card stock with somebody's picture printed on it is inherently worthless. But if it is that, that rookie card, whatever, it has that value to people. And so it's the same thing with these NFTs and Top Shot.
Absolutely. And I think, we've talked about too, there's always going to be people out there that have deep pockets, and that's okay. That's great. That definitely makes things move around. But I think as far as, just artists in general, like I was saying before, I think that this is kind of a new way to also just create some better digital security. Like the word security kept coming up a couple times in our discussions as well, of just, if this is something that you're looking to do, then dive into it, do some research, try a couple, small things and see how it goes and see how it works. It doesn't have to just be, if me as a consumer, I don't have a, $100,000 lying around to buy something really fancy, but, I still would advise my artists as just another marketing tool and another security tool in your belt as an artist. And like Chris was saying, and Ethan too, as far as being able to just have a little bit more stake and ownership, especially when it comes to further conversations as far as negotiations for any type of, deal of where your music is going, I think is really important.
Not having to wait 3 quarters on how many accounting departments to report your numbers.
Absolutely. So that's kind of my opinions on it. I mean, Chris, as kind of being the president of a record label, like where do you fall on it personally?
It's kind of funny. I don't know. NFTs were kind of like, did you ever buy a new car? And then all of a sudden you just start seeing your car everywhere. So it's NFT. We had launched something and I was on a call and somebody logged in. They wanted to be the first person to get the first shirt, the first piece of merch ever from this artist. This was probably about 5 days before I had ever heard about an NFT. So just now, they just really wanted to have a serial number that said 00001 or order number 0001 or whatever it was. They wanted to be that, which was really cool. But when you actually, kind of actually put that into business practice, wow, there are people out there that want to have, if they really like you, they want to have the first thing that you do like this.
Well,
And so that you're appealing to that person's either support for you and that person's desire to be a part of what you're doing, and be one of the founders, one of the, and people like having that for a whole bunch of different reasons. So I am all for them. But yes, I'm not going to go out and buy a Rembrandt. I'm going to go, Sotheby's sells $600 million paintings and, $6,000 paintings. So,
and hey, there are
works for
Rembrandt
you.
etchings that aren't in the millions.
Right. Yes, I know. So I'm all about, I'm not going to say I'm all about them because I'm not sure exactly what their influence is going to be and how people are or how they are going to get manipulated or massaged or turned into whatever they're going to be. We think we know what they're going to do, but somebody finds a way to use it to do something else. And you're like, oh, wow, never thought about that. Now all of a sudden everything kind of shifts. If they actually get power or at least some kind of more ownership back into the hands of the person or people who've created that entity, I'm all for them.
So, Chris, if I can ask you, so how are you treating the NFTs in your deals with artists? Are you keeping the splits basically tracking the same as any other digital?
I haven't had to do it yet. That's why we're having this discussion, because I don't know about NFTs. I haven't had to I'm sorry. I haven't had to do it yet because I don't think they really, it's like, I want to do that, but
it's still very early.
They're just people getting, and then here's the other thing. There's also, you now have to not only understand NFTs, you now have to go down you have to go down crypto. You're going to have to go down the crypto rabbit hole a little bit.
Yeah. Well, and at the same time, though, that's like with computers, how long all of us knew people that just resisted tooth and nail learning anything about computers. And
hold on, let me get my pencil out and
right. But it's to the point where, people were like, oh, I don't know how to work those things and doing the on the keyboard. And now, like, you can't function in modern society if you don't have at least a basic proficiency. And I think it's going to be the same thing with all of this, with crypto, with NFTs, with all of it. It may not be another 10 years until we're at that point. I mean, it took 40 for computers. But that time will come. And with all hell, with Doge running up, 400% in the last 3 days. I think it helps accelerate. That's one of the good things about these, hesitate to call them bubbles, but basically these bubbles that happen like this is when people are making a bunch of money, it gets a lot of attention onto it. And what that's doing is it's acting as an access point for a lot of education. A lot of people are saying, oh, wait, he made how much money? I need to learn about this. Or just from the constant barrage of, you literally can't get away from NFTs if you're consuming media right now.
Mm-hmm.
I would actually love to ask everyone I can't see everyone, but I would just love to know how many people have ever, when did you hear about NFTs? There's got to be a high percentage of people that it's yesterday. It's got to be pretty.
Yeah, drop in the chat there about the time that you first heard about NFTs.
And
did you 2017? Ever?
Yeah, that was around the same time that I think that I came across it. In a few years.
Or have you not heard about NFTs? Because honestly, I had never knew about an NFT until, what was it? I don't know, 2 months ago.
Couple months ago, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
Clubhouse, Jeff put in Clubhouse. Yeah, it's all over Clubhouse.
Yeah.
Month or so ago, 3 months.
And if any of you have
Weird.
been curious, I think I know. Everybody's like, well, where the hell did all this come from? I think I figured it out, like why it popped all of a sudden. There was an article that 1:37 p.m. posted, which is one of Gary Vaynerchuk's companies, that was like, what the F is an NFT or something to that extent, was kind of like a primer on it. And the part that was kind of behind the scenes was his partnership with Top Shot, because that article coincided with the launch of NBA Top Shot, which I haven't even seen the recent numbers for what Top Shot has done, but it's been insane. Yeah, Blau's drop as well. The 1:37 p.m. article came out about a week or two before Blau, and it was definitely that, like, the rapid succession of all of these different things that made it so big. But that was the first thing, like I said, that I saw, was that 1:37 p.m. article went out, and then it was like opening the floodgates.
So one follow-up question for me, for everyone, and I just kind of going off of what Caleb put in the chat, that he had, kind of rolled these out about a week ago for a band that he manages. So is anybody using them right now on the artist side, on the industry side? Like, who's started to dive in and kind of work with NFTs, and what's that experience been like so far? Good, bad, don't know yet. Because I think we're right. Yeah, this is something that, next year's summit, we'll have way more to talk about. It's kind of like, hey, let's like scratch the surface and kind of see, what's going on. But
right. So next year's summit, you start out with, so how much money did you make off of NFTs last year? Is that how that starts?
At least the good part is, we burn the unsold NFTs, so we don't end up with the boxes and boxes of unsold CDs in our mom's garage.
Right. Yes.
Hey, if this is the solution to that, I mean, the amount of artists that I know that have boxes and boxes of something in their parents' garage, this will be great.
Turn them into something. When we were working on the word fad, I said, well, were CDs a fad? I mean, they were around for 30 years. I mean, a long time, but they're going to be gone soon.
Well, so pretty much already are.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So yeah, Jeff, you're partnering with someone that's kind of doing a series. So kind of, yeah, we'll see.
Do we have a way? Can we like unmute people and bring them up for some Q&A or for some of this more participatory part of it? Or?
There we go. I hear people.
Yeah, if anybody wants to jump in just with their own personal thoughts on NFTs, like, we'd love to do that for the next couple minutes before we wrap up.
The reality was there's buzz about it. So the tactic we've taken is not worrying so much about what the NFT is, crafting the NFT, is just get one done. Right. And to be able to say to people, hey, we've got an NFT available. It's like saying I'm on iTunes. Right.
Right.
So you thought it was a good investment, whether you were going to make your money back or anything like that. It was just a good investment to get into?
Correct.
And I think that's what they're going to...
That makes it so approachable, right? Like, just with that mindset, it makes it so much less daunting, and say, let's do one, let's see how it goes, and let's figure this out. And yeah, I think that approachability to it, Kayla, I think makes it sound way less daunting for an artist to at least start,
What do I do? What song am I gonna give up? Oh, that's my favorite song. I don't want to give up that one. So, but I don't want to sell trash. Right. Yeah, I could just see the whole thinking unfold. And what we did was we did an animated version of the next single cover.
Nice.
So
cool.
We tied it in, so if you have the physical single or a card, and you run your phone over it, the single will animate visually on your phone, like an augmented reality thing.
Super cool.
Yeah. I mean, people are going to just be coming up with really, just pretty creative ways to create this, whatever, that experience.
And I think that's what I'm the most excited about with NFTs is it really like every other format that we've ever had across all arts has pretty much been, we're tied to audio visual. But with NFTs, it's really like whatever cool, interesting, engaging ways you can come up with to tell your story, as everything develops and the protocols get better and everything, you'll be able to have a VR experience that is part of the song, that is part of something else that has some other real world thing tied to it. And I think people are going to come up with some really incredible ways of storytelling via NFTs, is because there's not that limitation of here's the medium that you have to use.
Yeah, and I totally want to just throw one thing out to Chris. Back in the day, we bought a magazine that had a cassette tape stuck to it. And we're like, oh my goodness, I'm buying a magazine and I get music.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, I think, the way to start thinking of it. But that's really only the bottom line. And what Ethan's saying, the younger generation is saying is, magazine, cassette, what does that mean? Social experience and engagement is my meaning, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
Well,
the NFT can be an experience. It doesn't have to be the cassette tied to the magazine. It can be, but it's more flexible than that.
Right. Well, and I think the Kings of Leon golden ticket is a pretty good example of that, of what that can be. Obviously, not every artist is going to be able to do that. Personal chauffeur and black car service and backstage concierge. Like there's a lot that goes into it. And so I think that's another thing that people need to keep in mind when making NFTs is like, you can come up with all these cool concepts, but you still have to make sure that your economics are making sense.
right.
Like
It comes down to the ROI.
With the Kings of Leon thing, it sounds really impressive. All they did to all this huge fan, and you start looking at like, okay, but they spent 10 months at Blackbird and they're sending a car service and a concierge and all of this stuff for every golden ticket holder over the life of those NFTs. Like, is it actually going to be a profitable thing for them? We'll see. Either way, it's cool. It got them cemented their place in the history of the music technology.
Right.
But it is easy to get carried away and let the economics of it get carried away. And that's kind of a tale as old as the music industry.
I like to say you don't want to have the music inside to not be as good as the cover.
Right.
So if you sell this NFT and you're pitching it, but you don't follow through or you don't back it up, then you're going to have the opposite, right? You're going to be a black mark on your marketing.
Right. Well, and I think that goes for any sales medium, no matter what you're selling. I think that applies whether it's vinyl, whether it's CDs, whether it's NFTs, whether it's T-shirts.
Yeah, good point.
Anyone else using NFTs? Anyone thinking about them? Who was on here that actually built tools? Jeremy.
Jeremy.
What's up, guys? Awesome panel. Great to see you. Yeah, no, I was been getting into them for the last few months. Did a hackathon, as I mentioned in the chat, for NFTs, which has been pretty cool. I wanted to ask you guys. I mean, it's sort of related, but maybe in the same sort of crypto space. If you guys think about social tokens as an alternative or complementary to an NFT, and yeah, if you guys have had any experience with them, what your thoughts are.
I'm still mostly undecided. I am very skeptical. And I think that mostly is just mostly because of BitClout, I think. I've seen some other ones that look a lot less sketchy, and like there's a lot of conceptually like really cool things to it, and I think could be really powerful, but I'm just afraid it's going to end up getting very dark or very Black Mirror very quick. That's my only concern with it.
For
Yeah,
any of us
absolutely.
that are a little unfamiliar, Jeremy, do you want to give us a quick rundown elevator pitch of social tokens?
Yeah, sure. So social token is it's basically a type of coin that you can get. They can either be fungible or non-fungible. Fungible meaning you can exchange them for other tokens, or it can operate more like a currency, like a Bitcoin or something like that, or non-fungible being an NFT where there's a limited number of them, and they have some sort of utility, meaning like the Kings of Leon, where you can go to the stage and say, hey, here's my little coin, and this gets me backstage, or you can give you access to a private Discord or a private texting group or something else like that. So there's other ways to kind of build in these great, exclusive fan experience sort of stuff. And one of the things that I'm excited about them, obviously, BitClout is still an untested medium platform. And for those who don't know, BitClout is basically a combination of this sort of social token concept plus Twitter. So it's got a social media feed, plus you can invest in all the other users. But one of the things is you can't take your money out, which is kind of scary. But hey, that's just, small details. But anyways, one of the cool things that I've been thinking about this space is that unlike a Patreon or an OnlyFans, when you're buying to have an experience from an artist, what you can do with social tokens is, because if they're set up in the right way, they can gain in value over time. So that means as a fan or a consumer, I can buy your social token, and today it's worth $1, and maybe in a few years it's worth $100. So then I can go and be a part of your success as an artist and kind of get that upside as well. So that's why I'm particularly interested in that particular space. I just wanted to know what your guys' thoughts were.
I've got a big question for you on that. Where is the regulation at on that? Because to me, that basically sounds like you're creating a security and kind of like doing an IPO for a person, which if you don't go through the correct regulatory things in the SEC, probably I'd be surprised if they've said anything about it by now. But it just seems like there's going to be a lot of kind of legal quagmire around these social tokens, and because they're basically, like I said, basically securities. So they're going to have to be regulated as securities.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Isn't that all behind? Isn't that the kind of the movement behind? Isn't it like the bankless movement? Where
being unbanked, that's a very different kind of situation, I think, if we're talking about the same thing. Whereas this is more, the social tokens, like I said, it's more kind of like doing an IPO but for you instead of a company, if that makes sense.
Gotcha.
I think that's an important question. I feel that they will probably be regulated at some point.
Yeah,
especially
probably sooner rather than later.
Probably sooner rather than later, just because, or the platform itself will have to change it. So maybe that the token itself isn't an actual currency, and maybe it's just like a representation of the dollar or currency or something like that. But either which way, whether it's the individual tokens, social tokens, or the whole platform currency, right? Because BitClout has its own coin, which is the BitClout coin. That will definitely have to be regulated, because it's kind of, gambling. It's a security. It's you can lose money on it. But it's an interesting, even post regulation, there's high fees or whatnot, I think it's still an interesting concept for fans to be able to say, hey, I'm an investor in my favorite artist, not just a consumer, which I personally think is pretty compelling.
Right.
And down the rabbit hole we go.
I feel like
surprise y'all on Clubhouse now.
This group of us could probably talk about this until midnight. So I do know that we want to be respectful of our next panelists and what's coming up next. So if there's any last minute questions or opinions or just final thoughts before we kind of wrap up and hand this back over to Stefan. But I mean, thank you so much, Chris and Ethan, for helping me put this together. Thank all of you guys, Balanced Breakfast members, for just being a part of the conversation and kind of just figuring this all out together. And we'll just keep watching it and seeing how it takes off as far as just a new way for us to digitally exchange art. And I think it's going to be a cool thing to keep focus on. But any last, kind of questions or opinions or just overall thoughts?
David Bowie.
Yeah.
So Chris is talking about the rabbit hole. And yes, there is a tech rabbit hole aspect to this, but Bowie in like 98, he created a Bowie credit card with a Bowie IPO, and he put his next 5 albums into that IPO. And to me, that was an NFT. So The tech aspect to it might be rabbit hole-ish, but I think the general concept of making fans into investors is a good thing.
Mhm.
Yeah, I like that too. I mean, being able to think of, and I think there are so many fans out there, probably more than we give credit to, that really want to be investors in artists, just like they would a company in the stock market. They want to put money into an artist that they really believe in. So why not create a safe way to do that?
Well, look at how successful crowdfunding has been for artists over the last decade or so. So clearly the fans want to do it. There just hasn't been a good mechanism, and fingers crossed this is going to be that mechanism.
And once we went to streaming, once we went to digital, whether you want to go back to how far back you want to go, but once we went to digital, we lost our physical medium. We lost our vinyl, and especially our covers, our album covers with all the information. We lost CDs, we lost tapes, we lost
Liner notes.
yeah, we lost laser discs. I mean, we go through everything, but everything went digital, and we have nothing. There's nothing here. There's nothing tangible, and music by itself isn't even tangible. It's literally just moving air molecules. And so, how do you own that? How do you kind of own a piece of that? And now it's all digital. So NFTs, the best way to own something that doesn't really exist.
Hey, I like that wrap up. Why don't we just like have that be our closing sentence and call it a night for NFTs? But yeah, thank you, Ethan. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Stefan, and all of you guys for being here on this summit and just kicking the night off with some tech. I love it.
Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you
Thank
guys
you.
so much for having us.
Thanks, Chelsea. Thanks, Stefan.
For sure. I think there was a panel yesterday that was concerned that they were going to be the nerdiest panel. I mean, I think all the panels might be able to fight over that title of like, let's see if we can out tech, out nerd each other. So I think that could be a pretty good theme. But yeah, thanks for taking us down that rabbit hole. Deeper than I ever knew I wanted to go, but now I'm there, so I appreciate
And we're not
it.
even scratching the surface yet.
I'm worried that I'm going to be one of the poor ones next year when I don't have all my NFTs that I've purchased, or that I'm not like making bank, but
Somebody should start a band called NFT and then issue an NFT on it.
I like this plan. I like this plan a lot. I think we posted your guys' social information